about a half an hour to do it, so we'll move right along. The update on the Tonkin Drain petition project. We had our day of, we had the day of review first, which led to 7 appeals. So we had our board of review. That was held June 4th up at the courthouse. The board of review has set the roll. That roll now will remain set to move forward. Whether that be doing a project or abandoning it hasn't been determined yet. I was asked by Commissioner Zimmerman to pull some more data together and to come up with a potential abandonment costs, and I'm working on that. I've got a culvert report in the works, and so, but I want the board or this committee to understand that the revised board of review set the drain roll and has to stay that way. I can't change it again. The only way to change it again would be to open up another board of another day of review, and at this point that's not going to happen. So those percentages are set now. So it just is a matter of what we do moving forward. And I'm in working on the letter that the board was sent from Zimmerman, and that's the status on that. So any discussion on that? It's been covered recently in the recent board of commissioners meeting. So any questions or comments?
Yeah, probably the biggest question is, like you mentioned on the abandonment cost, what that would curtail, and how would that be divided up, or would the county absorb that?
That would be a discussion for the board of commissioners. If you say that this has to be assessed out, and then I have to follow the percentages set by the board of review. At this point, there's some of that comp of cost would come out, because construction costs could come out. Things of that nature, if we're not doing it, you can back out construction costs. I'm also not sure if the county would let me borrow money to do that. That's a conversation for finance. Or if I still have to borrow money to pay what's the sunk costs, I'll call them. I don't know at this point, Gary, because I don't have a number.
But to stop the project, there's no way of stopping it right now, or is it just complicated?
Been misconstrued. I was specifically asked if there was a referendum vote to stop the project. That's not how you stop the project. To stop the project now would be to go through this roll, come up with our comp of costs for our sunk costs, and say, okay, if we're not moving forward, these costs still have to be paid for. And we also have to iron out the details of not moving forward. There's potential for liability here still. This is deemed a drain.
Now, what kind of liability would we be encompassing?
Well, you still have water trespassing on the properties south of where we sit now, illicit discharge, as they like to call it. You have life resources with a void in the building where the tile is right now. The easement acquisition said that if you take that tile, turn it out into the road and go out and around the problem. All of these things wouldn't get fixed if we don't move forward. So that building could fall into a sinkhole and become a liability.
And is there any way of doing these, the Tonkin Drain project in phases, so that way it kind of cushions the blow?
You could do a phase, but that gets tricky too, because maintenance is just in-kind maintenance. So at this point, to expand specifically down past the existing historical drain, we added some easements to take it to that last culvert on 13 Mile Road because it's undersized. And to do that now, that was never dug as a drain. So it requires an eagle permit because now you're taking a stream and doing work in it. So to piecemeal this together is still gonna basically require a petition because maintenance is just that. Going and replacing in-kind things. Well, in-kind tile, as we know, or in-kind culverts are not gonna suffice. So you'd still need some sort of a petition. Maybe the petition says we only work from 205th down to the last culvert on 13 Mile Road. Those kind of things would have to be determined. You would still end up with a series of assessments, because this project, if we assess this out, let's cut it right in half and call it 2.5 million. Well, you're gonna lose all your MDOT money because they're not gonna pay for work right now to abandon it. That comes back. You're gonna lose your Ferris money because we didn't do a project. So all that 2.5 million now gets assessed to the at-larges and the property owners. How long do they wanna pay back 2.5 million? 10 years, 15 still? I don't know. So let's say it's 10 years, there's an assessment running for 10 years to pay back 2.5 million. In the meantime, something comes up that we can't ignore. We need some sort of emergency repair or some other thing. Then you're gonna have this assessment running to repay these. You're gonna have potential another assessment running to make this repair. 10 more years, something else fails. I could literally see 3 assessments running concurrent on this project.
And if nothing changes, what is the start date?
If nothing were to change, the start date with Dean's was gonna do their phase to tie into Northgate Drain. They said late summer, 2025.
So we still have a short period of time to see if we can come to a solution.
Right. I'm
Okay.
pulling together the requests that I've been asked to. At this point, like I said, the condition of the culvert down there by the old Falconhead golf course is an MDOT culvert, and I know that that's in bad condition.
And you believe that MDOT wouldn't
Well, MDOT might,
just fix it on,
they probably could later, but I think MDOT was trying to get economies of scale, knowing that Dean's is already here working. They've already got it planned out. I have an MDOT permit to work in the corridor to do this. They've already got the traffic control figured out. We have a call into MDOT to let them know that potentially this was gonna be abandoned, and I haven't heard back a response yet.
okay.
I could see them, Gary, wanting to push that forward because you know how hard it is to get this many ducks in a row.
Correct.
And if they do, then that would be a cost that they would undertake.
So it almost sounds like we're gonna have to have another meeting or something like that after we can formulate some different game
Correct.
plans. So right now, we don't have anything further on the Tonkin drain other than what we
Just other than the
discussed.
assessment roll has been set, that has to stay that way. So we have another day of review.
All right, we'll have to have a brainstorm on that one. What about the geyser drain?
The Geetson Drain, do you remember going out there during the drain tour about a month ago? We kind of talked about it. I got a picture of it because after a while these drains kind of start looking the same. They do, Mindy. I mean, even to me, I'm like, which one is that again? So there's an early on, some work has been done on the Geetson Drain, and that's out in Remus along M20. For the past few years, working with a contractor, we've dipped out over on 50th Avenue by the God's Helping Hands. We moved across going east, and we're almost at the end of it. And that was one of the last basins in there, and as you can see, it's not working. When couldn't farm it for part of the season, he had a bunch of flooding. It was just full of brush and continues to be full of brush. He's not getting a good outlet. So he contacted me again after we went out there last year and replaced some of the tile to get it working from that picture that I first showed you. So that's been an ongoing maintenance project. And a maintenance project is just that. You can go out and you used to be able to spend $5,000 a mile. Now you can spend $10,000 a mile to do these things. And these are for small repairs, and you can see there the basin again after it's been cleaned out. It's going to work. Well, I was out there just the other day, and now I'm standing where you saw that basin. So he needs some more relief.
Well, it almost seems like in the course of digging that out and maintaining
Made it worse
should-
almost, didn't it?
It did, because it loosened up all the stuff that held the soil in place.
So now that's downstream of that basin that all that's so full of brush, you can't even get there, cause it's kind of a weird system. It's open ditch, then it runs through tile through a lot of his fields, then outlets back into an open ditch. And he's asking me to finish cleaning up that last open ditch. The tile, he said, has been working good, so I just wanna make you aware that that should be the last little chunk of the Geetson drain to get it functional.
Now, on that, drain grate right there, it looked like all the clay and all that other stuff was balled up around it. How come they didn't figure on putting like busted concrete or rock in there to hold the bank in place?
He did, that was just one picture in time when I happened to be out there and they were working on it. Yes, but it's so weedy out there now and all that brush to the east that's never gotten touched. Now Lynn is telling me that it's really hard to get into that, to carry it the rest of the way over. But at least the tile section that was busted has been replaced and he's been watching it really well. That drain hadn't been worked on since 1982.
Okay, so in other words, that, it's still been taken care of.
I'm hoping this last chunk will get him the relief that he needs.
What kind of thoughts do you got on how to, make it to where, the vegetation can be,
Well, that's
trimmed back or
just
whatever?
it. I talked to Lynn about that, and that section over the tile, he can now farm over it again, keep that, but I said to him the same thing. I said, if this gets dipped out, are you gonna try to keep it maintained? And he said that he would, that he recently acquired this property. He hasn't owned it for maybe a couple of years, so he's gonna continue to farm it and maintain it.
Okay, so we'll see how that goes.
Yes.
Okay, what about the Cummings one?
The Cummings and Pine Lake drains, that's right in Remus, that's at the ball field. Remember we walked down there during the drain tour and looked at that culvert down there?
Yeah, yeah.
Well, the Wheatland Township contacted us directly to see about doing some maintenance there. That hasn't been cleaned out all the way to Pine Lake Road since Jeff Abel's father was a child. So you're talking 60 years. So they would like to see that ditched all the way down there to get that water out of there. And I talked to Brian Sutton, who's gonna do the work. He's also going in there to do some tiling for the township. They'd like to actually use that more of an outlet for that ball field. Get some more tile in there to get it drained better. Because if you walk down there, and even today like that, it'd be somewhat squishy. It's just a low, swampy area. So I've been requested to do that. I've walked it. Brian's walked it twice. He's hoping to get out there in a week or two with the brush hog to clear all the brush to see what he's got left to work with. And he's hoping to have that done. Then I'm off.
Now, is there a rotating schedule on maintenance to where you do this and that? I realize it's a deep question.
There hasn't been in a long time. There's starting to be now. Because of all the work that's been done recently, we're already starting to circle back. Like the culp drain was cleaned out in 2015. Well, it was great for about 3 years, and then all the dead ash in the county started falling. So we went back in 2021 and had a contractor go through and do a lot of clearing of the dead trees.
Okay.
So the Ford drain actually was done in 2020, and I spot checked that, but at some point, I think that needs to be looked at again, because it's cheaper to take this stuff out here and there. Another example is the snow drain. That was a petition that was done in 2015. Since then, I've had contractors go through there and do some select clearing here and there too, especially, you know, a big tree falls in there, and it's a steep bank, and it doesn't take long, and you got a problem, a swirl starting. The Wilmer drain just last year, after that emergency repair was done, myself and a contractor walked the entire thing, and he hand cut some of the stuff out of it with a chainsaw. Sometimes that little stuff, you don't think it matters, but it totally can matter if it's blocking off a culvert. So we're trying to get to that point, Gary. When I became drain commissioner, I had 5 open petitions, if you will. We were trying to finish up the Blanchard Inter-County drain. The Ford drain was under petition. Ives drain was under petition. Tonkin drain was under a petition. And there was a petition in to replace the Brady Lake Dam. So.
And when you get a petition, you have to act according to the
You have
law
to
or
set
the
up
office?
You have to act according to the drain code. You have to have a board of determination. And all of those had and all were deemed necessary. There's
Okay,
no other petitions on the table right now, but there are requests for maintenance, as I just explained to you.
now, I know I've brought this up and I've mentioned it a few different times, and that back when I grew up, down in Monroe County, they used to burn the drains or ditches, and that to keep the vegetation from accumulating into organic mass. Is that something that's feasible, or is that something that's right out the window anymore, because times
It's
have
kinda out
changed?
the window, and then you gotta remember too, some of these drains have plastic tile in them. You really wouldn't wanna melt your tile and end up creating a problem you didn't have prior to that. And I don't wanna be in a newspaper like that deal in Reed City with showing pictures of the fire at that
Oh,
brush place, so I would steer against that. And I think the property owners along the drain would concur with that.
okay, and this here might be far-fetched or out of the ordinary or nothing like that, but years ago, out in California, they had a company that had goats, that they would put up a portable fence, and the goats would go in there and they'd come back a week later and it'd all be ate down. Is that something that's ever been explored?
No, I think that'd be another hard thing to do, because you gotta remember, Gary, these ag drains are going through somebody's farm fields or whatnot, and there's only a 50-foot easement usually through there, so, I mean, trying to come in there and do something like that would probably be kind of intrusive to the property owner, especially like on the Ford drain. That's pretty much an entire ag drain down here at Steve Kramer's, and, you know, they're farming that right up to the 3 inches from going over into the ditch sometimes, so.
Okay, well, I just thought I'd plant a seed on different options
Yeah,
and that,
and
and so.
like I said, and a lot of this will be phone calls, you know, we've got a problem out here, here's what's going on, and we try to address those as they come up. And a lot of times, you'll find that, especially on agricultural drains, the farmer themselves will take ownership of it, because it means I get good drainage if I keep brush out of it, or I get good drainage if I pull that stump out. So you get more ownership. It's a little harder to do, like with a tile system where they can't really see it and that, but they'll let you know when there's a blowout for sure.
Is that something a majority of farmers take up on their own? Because I know a lot of them have their own excavator and that, or do they look at it to where I'm not gonna do nothing because I'll let the county do it?
It's pretty much half and half, yeah.
Half and half. And then on these petitions, what formulates a board of determination? Who's on it and how do you pick them?
Okay, so let's just pick this Geetson drain example. If they would have wanted a petition for that, there's options. Lynn Wernette would have had to get 4 more signatures from property owners and present it as a petition. Wheatland Township could maybe see the need for it and say, no, we'll petition for it. The road commission could say, you know, if that drain functioned better, we wouldn't be out here worrying about water on the road or issues. They could petition for it. MDOT even can petition for a drain. One, they don't need signatures. They themselves, acting as a public entity, can come forward. If it's petitioned by property owners, the 5 of them minimum, we have to go through and make sure they don't have no back taxes for 3 years. If they clear that, then it's up to the drain commissioner to pick the board of determination. Now let's say it's the Geetson drain and I live in Remus and I'm in the district, I can't sit on that. I would have to turn it over to someone, the board of commissioners, to pick that board, because I am not, I have a conflict of interest.
Okay.
Or if my sister lived in the drainage district, that would be a conflict of interest. So those members, 3 members are picked with 1 alternate. They hear testimony, they see photographs. They determine, is there a need for work on the drain? They don't set the scope, they don't set the cost, they just say, yes, we see a need to have work on this drain.
Okay. And then what about your beaver activity?
The beaver are the worst I've ever seen them in the 11 years of being here. They are. Remember when we went on May and saw that dam and it was totally clear?
Yeah.
Well, that's what it looks like as of Monday. The trapper's been called, but it's hard for maybe you to see, but up here is completely full of mud and branches. There wasn't one drop of water going over that dam. And that beaver trapper had been called soon after we went on our inspection, so I don't know the answer. He'll kill 2 or 3 of them out of there, and you think you're doing good, and 3 weeks later, you'll go back there and it's just chock right full again. And the same thing on Long Lake. That's the lake level just to the north of that. It's back off that long dirt road. They had beaver activity there. I talked to the property owners back there because they like to take care of themselves. He said he's been fighting them for a good month.
Now, is there, does a beaver trapper have exclusive rights to that, or is there other trappers around that could,
Like the one on Long Lake, that it's a hunt club is off to the side of that, so those guys take care of it themselves. The trapper is called for this, and the trapper is probably gonna be needed to call on a park stream, which is over by Lake 26, because the beaver have been in the northern section of that. The outlet is the park stream for that, so I would call them, or Ken Schneider usually will call and tell me it's time to call the trapper.
now, if beavers are that prevalent, how come he just don't run a ongoing trap line, or is there no, do we pay for that, or does he?
They charge us usually per beaver, and the problem is, Gary, that it's kind of a lost art. People just don't get into it anymore. There's really no money to be had in the pelt. One of the best trappers in the county was Vern Young, and he's retired. And he's training his nephew, but there's just not a lot of guys that, we had a guy do Chippewa Lake last year, and now he's said he's injured, so he's not doing it. He passed it off to a friend, and so.
Now, what's our, out of curiosity, what's our cost on?
It's usually $60 a beaver, and then they might charge 50, 60, sometimes even $100 to pull all that stuff out for us.
Oh.
Nicole and I have pulled it out ourselves before. We didn't pull this out because I had a meeting to go to at Jensen Lake, and I told her I can't show up at the Jensen Lake meeting covered in mud and grime, but she and I pulled it out before, just to get the water going till the trapper can get here.
Now, out of curiosity, and then on some of the cleanup, is that something that community service workers could do, or is that too big of a risk?
I don't know, Gary. That's a good question.
You know,
I don't know if they'd be willing to take the van clear back in there to get that.
yeah. Well, that might be something to be thought about or brainstormed.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then there's beaver activity again on the Mark Meeker drain, which is south of Barrington on Mike Ayers' property. The beaver haven't been in there for 5, 6 years, and all of a sudden now they're back with a vengeance. So it's, the road commission can tell you the same thing. It's ongoing all summer long, so.
Okay. All right. Now on the soil and erosion permit report.
Our soil and erosion permit report is falling in line with where we usually are. As of the end of May, you can see the numbers are probably gonna catch up to where they've been in the prior year. Same with the revenue, so that's going well. Seems like it's the year of the addition and the pole barn. And wells and septic seem to be going, replaced more now than I think I've seen in a long time, so that kind of makes up that.
So the numbers are low because it's
Well, we're
early in the
only,
season?
yeah. October is usually one of our busiest months because they're trying to get their last minute projects in.
Okay.
One good thing is eagle violations are trending back down. Eagles back out in the field doing more. During the pandemic, people were going a little cowboy and doing things.
Now what, just for educational purposes, what dictates an eagle violation?
Like recently we got a letter that someone in Canadian Lakes went out and beyond the normal footprint of the house they were building and went down and took a bunch of fill dirt and pushed it in what they deemed was wetland vegetation. you and I might look at that, Gary, and not think, well, that doesn't look like a wetland, I don't see a cattail. But you gotta remember the soil types, different vegetation is a wetland in their book, and we're not experts at it. That's usually when I tell people, if you're any doubt, call them, so. They
Okay.
didn't stay in their footprint for their home, they started leveling it.
So in other words, that would be something that Eagle would be more concerned
Right.
about than us.
But a lot of times, if it's work that's done without a soil erosion permit, we have to get involved, make sure they get a soil erosion permit for that work.
Okay. Any other business that you wanna chat about?
We do have some public, and I'd like to
Yep.
give them a chance.
Yep, that's next. Okay, public comment, anybody wanna speak their mind?
And please tell us your name, and so we can get it.
Okay, well, we'll move on then. The date and time for the next meeting is gonna be Wednesday, September 10th.
Yep, we meet quarterly, so hopefully we'll have some pictures of some completed work to show you.
Okay, and if we gotta hold a special meeting, we'll just have to figure that
Yes.
out in between.
Right, correct, Gary.
All right, if nobody has nothing else, I'm sorry about being late. So I talked really fast. So this meeting's adjourned. Thanks for coming.
Did you bring the resolution?